You've probably seen this book everywhere, right? The orange cover, that title you can't ignore. It became a global sensation, and for a really good reason. So today, we're going to break down Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck and dig into the surprisingly deep message hiding behind that, well, that very bold title.
All right, so to really get to the heart of this book, we've got to start with a total loser. No, seriously, meet Charles Bukowski. By pretty much every standard we have, the guy was a failure. He was an alcoholic, a womanizer, a gambler who was always broke. So why on earth does a book about living a good life kick off with a guy like this?
Well, here's why. Bukowski never, ever tried to be something he wasn't. He knew he was a mess, and you know what? He owned it. He wrote about his flaws with this raw, brutal honesty. And that acceptance of his own failure, that's the foundation of Manson's whole philosophy. See, Bukowski didn't give a fuck about what we call success. He cared about telling his truth, no matter how ugly it was. And that, as it turns out, made all the difference.
And that brings us to the central paradox of this whole idea. You hear that title and you probably think it means just being indifferent, right? Not caring about anything at all. But it's actually the complete opposite. This is where the whole subtle art part comes in. Manson's point is that you only have a limited amount of energy, a limited number of fucks to give. You literally can't care about everything and everyone. So the art is learning how to prune. It's about consciously choosing what really deserves your attention and just letting go of all the trivial, superficial noise. Now, this idea of choosing what to care about leads Manson to take a huge swing at a pillar of modern culture, this relentless pressure to always be positive. He argues that our society's obsession with good vibes only is actually a huge part of what's making us so miserable. He calls it the feedback loop from hell, and come on, we've all been there. You're scrolling through social media, you see everyone's perfect vacation photos, and you start to feel a little anxious or down. But then it gets worse. You start feeling bad about feeling bad. You get anxious about your anxiety. It's this nasty downward spiral, and it's all fueled by this idea that it's just not okay to have negative feelings. This leads to a really wild concept called the backwards law. Here's the gist. The more you desperately try to feel happy, the more you just end up reinforcing the idea that you aren't. It's like trying to grab a fistful of water. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. Paradoxically, the only way to actually feel better is to just accept that, hey, sometimes you're going to feel bad, and that's okay. And this really gets to the core of it. We think we want a life with no problems, but Manson argues that pain and struggle are what give life its meaning. The most satisfying moments don't come from avoiding problems. They come from overcoming them. So, okay, if happiness isn't about feeling good all the time or avoiding pain, then what in the world is it? Well, Manson offers a completely different way to think about it. Happiness isn't some destination you finally arrive at. It's an activity. It's a work in progress. Think about it. You solve the problem of being out of shape by going to the gym. But now you have new problems, right? Like being sore or having to wake up early. The goal isn't a life without problems. The goal is to find the good problems, the ones you actually enjoy solving. This is the question we almost always ask ourselves, isn't it? What do you want to enjoy? A high-paying job? A perfect family? Being a famous musician? It's the highlight reel. It's easy to dream about. But according to Manson, it's also the wrong question. This is the real gut check question, because every single reward in life requires a struggle. You want the amazing body? Are you willing to sustain the pain of sore muscles and early mornings? See, it's easy to want the prize. The more important question is, what's the struggle you're willing to embrace to get there? Because ultimately, this is what defines us. It's not our shiny goals and dreams that shape who we are. It's the struggles we're willing to go through for them. In a way, our problems determine our successes. So how do we actually put this into practice? It all comes down to choosing your struggles with care. And that means you have to choose the right values, the right yardstick to measure your life by. And there's no better example of this than the story of two musicians. Both got kicked out of their bands right before they became two of the biggest bands in history. You have Dave Mustaine, who got fired from Metallica. He went on to create Megadeth, sold over 25 million albums, and by his own admission, always felt like a failure. Then you have Pete Best, the original drummer for the Beatles. He went on to live a normal, quiet life and said he was happier than he ever could have been. How is that even possible? It all came down to the metric they used. Mustaine's metric for success was to be bigger than Metallica, a goal that was completely external and totally out of his control. So no matter how successful he got, he was always in their shadow. Pete Best, though, eventually changed his metric. He chose something internal and controllable, having a loving family and a stable life. So you have one guy who achieved incredible success and was miserable, and another guy who experienced what looks like a massive failure and found happiness. It's all about the scorecard you choose.
So, all of this, choosing your values, choosing your struggles, choosing your metrics, it all gets filtered through one final, inescapable, and honestly, terrifying reality. There it is, the thought we spend most of our lives trying to avoid. But Manson argues that confronting our own mortality is the single most important thing we can do. It's the ultimate filter. It cuts through all the BS and shows us what truly matters. And just like that, we're right back to Bukowski. Facing death puts all of our tiny anxieties, our petty disagreements, and our silly fears into perspective. It's the ultimate clarifier. When you truly accept that your time is limited, you suddenly get real selective about what's worth your energy, about what's worth giving a fuck about. So, the final question really is for you. In the face of your own limited time here, what pain are you willing to sustain? What values are going to define your struggles? What legacy will you choose to build? Because when you stop giving a fuck about all the things that don't matter, you finally free yourself up to build a life that does.